Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
This is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is a bi-weekly podcast covering true crime,
Unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
urban legends, and the dark side of the Sunshine State.
and first things first, thank our Patreons.
Woo, Patreons, love them.
True Crime Nana, Kathy, Nicole, Paula, Laura, and Joshua.
And our newest being, Paula, right?
I think Laura is the newest.
Oh, well, you know what? Doesn't matter. I still remember our first, so it's okay. True Crime Nana. No one forgets their first, remember?
All right, so this week we are discussing
A case out of Lee County, which is Fort Myers,
Florida. In the spring of 1996, the city of Fort Myers was terrorized by a group of teenagers calling themselves the Lords of Chaos,
a.k.a. Bag O' Dicks.
Starting out with prank phone calls, the group eventually escalated to murder.
Yeah, the Lords of Chaos consisted of 4 main members, right?
Yes.
And the main one,
Kevin Foster, he was the leader. His nickname was God.
or Crooked Face, as I call him.
His house was the gathering place where all the outcasts were welcome. Kevin's mother was more like a friend. She and her son took the boys in like family. His parents owned a pawn shop and apparently an arsenal of guns in the home.
Well, that's what pawn shops really are, is guns.
And he'd been around guns his whole life. As he grew older, his mother's pawn shop became kind of a private arsenal for the family.
Yeah, and I guess the second one in line, or the main, would be Peter Magnotti. Magnotti was the first mate, as he was called. He kind of recruited in the group, so he'd go out and look for new members. They nicknamed him Fried. I can't imagine why, but he was described as being brilliant, a talented artist who dreamed of designing animation or comic books. But he was small, weak, ostracized by the in-crowd. He poured his anger into these violent sketches, his netherworld of fantasy, and he wrote the Lords of Chaos Manifesto.
Christopher Black. Now, Magnotti introduced Black to Foster. His nickname was Slim. Described as a chunky computer geek, he was just as smart, just as angry, and just as lonely as Magnotti was.
And Derek Shields, being the last of the 4 main members, he could be described as sort of the loosest link of the Lords of Chaos. He didn't care for Foster as Black and Magnotti did, but he didn't stand up to him either. So he would kind of just sank under his power, if you will.
Right.
And his nickname was Mob.
The group also included lesser associates Chris, a.k.a. Red Burnett, Thomas, a.k.a. Dog Tyrone, Brad Young, and Craig Lesh.
Why didn't they get cool names like Butt Nugget and
I
Turd
don't
Sandwich?
know. I don't know. On March 24th, 1996, the Lords of Chaos set off on their first crime spree. They stole 2 Jeep Cherokees from a dealership and burned them in an abandoned section of Lehigh Acres. The next criminal act they committed was at a Walmart pharmacy. They took a soda can and filled it with brake powder, which closely resembles gunpowder. Then they took wires and attached them to the can with duct tape and placed the can on a shelf at the pharmacy. They called the store and told an employee a bomb was inside. Someone eventually found the can and 100 people were evacuated from the store. The police arrived, swarmed the store.
Were they more surprised that there were only 100 people in the store?
They then committed smaller acts, breaking car windows at churches and shopping centers, opening fire hydrants, threw objects at road signs, and broke the windows of a row of yellow taxi cabs before targeting the location of their next crime. Next, they went on to The Hut, a restaurant on Buckingham Road. 2 macaws, exotic birds, were in the cages in the back garden of the restaurant. They decided to set a fire, intending to kill the birds. They used dry palm tree foliage nearby and a flammable liquid to start the fire. 1 bird died in the fire, and it's estimated each bird cost $3,000 and the cage $1,000.
Wow. And it was after this fire that Kevin Foster, the leader of the group, made it official. He decided that they should form a militia dedicated to raining terror upon the community of Lee County.
Kevin decided to make order in the ranks.
So he's going to go ahead and set this up as a real militia then.
Yes. He gave them all one-syllable code names. Slim, Fried, Mob, Red, Dog, and then named himself God.
Except for the other two lackeys who didn't get cool nicknames.
Pete Magnotti sketched a logo for the group. Now, their acts up to this point didn't provoke the fear or receive the media attention they wanted. So on April 17th, the group wrote a document entitled Declaration of War, Formal Introduction of Lords of Chaos, which they planned to mail to the Lee County Clerk Traffic Violations Bureau, but ultimately did not. The manifesto warned, Lee County is dealing with a formidable foe with high-caliber intelligence, balls of titanium alloy, and a wicked, destructive streak. Be prepared for destruction of biblical proportions, for this is the coming of a new God, whose fiery hand shall lay waste to the populace. The games have just begun, and terror shall ensue.
Now, for all of our South Park fans, just picture Butters when he becomes Captain Chaos. That's what I picture right now. Look at us. We've evacuated a Walmart. We're going to reign terror. So just picture Butters. I do have a question, though. When you said that I couldn't find this, and maybe you did, and I know that's kind of how we do stuff. I look up stuff, you look up stuff. But did you find the graphic or their logo for Lords of Chaos? I couldn't find it.
I did not.
I couldn't find it either. So they must have taken it down so it wasn't used again or something, because I looked everywhere for this thing. So I might try to find it before we post anything. So maybe
it's likely that it was just a drawing on a piece of paper.
Yeah, but I thought they had their logo.
It's not they had a website or anything.
Well, that would have been cool, rookies. Well, you got to stop and think though. These guys predated Columbine. So
That's true.
This is before Columbine. So this was the original douchebags of high school.
Trenchcoat Mafia.
Yeah. I just asked that because I was thinking maybe didn't they paint them on walls and stuff? I mean, didn't they have their, or am I thinking of Latin Kings?
I think you might be thinking of something else.
Yeah, maybe because I thought they had posted something back then, because I remember Lords of Chaos back then, and I thought maybe it was. That doesn't matter. I went on this rant, and I apologize, but I just couldn't find it, and it was driving me nuts. And I know that he drew one, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
Okay.
So all I saw was crooked face every time I Google this crap. James Greenhill, he was the town's crime reporter. He never got the manifesto. Only a small community paper noticed the vandalism at all, which it diminished as acts of less than average intelligence carried out by pea-brained vandals. Like I said, Butters. So the following Friday, the Lords of Chaos, they decided to show the unsuspecting town what they could do. So here's where shit gets real.
On April 20th, they packed 10 stolen propane tanks into a pickup truck and headed for the vacant Coca-Cola bottling plant. They snuck into the plant and placed the 10 propane tanks, turning on the knobs of each tank after they placed them. As a perverse joke, they used a can of Pepsi filled with gunpowder and fitted with a 25-foot firework fuse to destroy the historic building. The group ran out of the building, into the truck, and drove to a park to await the destruction. After 12 minutes, the explosion happened, and glass was projected all the way onto US 41.
Which was a pretty good distance, by the way.
Their original plan had been to destroy the building on April 19th to emulate the Oklahoma City bombing, which had occurred on that date the year before. Like Timothy McVeigh, he saw his actions as retaliation against the government for the Waco siege, which had occurred on April 19th, 1993. The fire made headlines. Alone in his house, Kevin collected the articles that Jim Greenhill wrote. Police would later find him on his desk. He liked them.
So he liked to cut the newspaper clippings and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Because this one guy was the one that sort of wrote all the shit, right? All the newspaper articles about this particular thing.
Jim Greenhill, yeah. He was the crime reporter.
Yeah, once he sort of took over and this stuff started happening, he started writing about him, and it was kind of his job to write about this stuff. So this guy would clip his particular clippings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just clarifying. So now on April 30th, the group decided to steal clothes from a local dealer's store for an upcoming grad night at Walt Disney World. Foster planned to steal one of the characters' costumes to use as a disguise to shoot minorities at the amusement park. As a part of the diversion, Foster rigged a smoke grenade, which he purchased from an Army-Navy store with fishing wire. This plan was stack up the clothes they wanted and run out when the grenade went off. The grenade proved to be a dud. So whatever happened to Army Navy stores anyway? Doesn't matter.
Next, the boys decided to vandalize Riverdale High School's auditorium. There, they stole latex gloves, a fire extinguisher, 2 staplers, and a bag of canned peaches.
Captain Chaos.
Foster rigged a Clorox bleach bottle full of gasoline with a lit rag and threw it through the auditorium window. Mark Schwebes, the school's music teacher and band leader, was holding an open house, greeting next year's freshmen and prospective musicians. He was leaving the school around dusk when he noticed a couple students by the payphone. Chris Black and Thomas Tyrone, the outer ring Lords of Chaos members, were the students that Schwebes noticed. Schwebes noticed the boys had a fire extinguisher, some staplers, canned peaches, and gloves. What's with the canned peaches?
I don't know. Maybe they get hungry. Captain Chaos.
Oh my God. Schwebes confiscated everything and said the boys would be getting a visit from the school resource officer.
For folks that don't know, in Florida, we call them resource officers. It's deputies, school deputies. I don't think they call them that everywhere.
School resource officer.
Yes.
After Schwebes left, Black angrily stated, "This has to be fixed tonight because tomorrow's a school day. So he's gotta die tonight."
Someone's gotta die tonight.
Black suggested that they follow Schwebes and make the killing look like a robbery. However, upon further discussion, the group decided to go to Schwebes' home and kill him there instead.
Now, although Schwebes, he had an unlisted telephone number, the boys somehow were able to come up with his address through a local directory assistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Foster called the number associated with the address. He got confirmation after hearing Schwebes' voice on the answer machine that it was him. So they knew that they had the right guy, the right house.
They went to Foster's home where they obtained a map to confirm the exact location of Schwebes' address and procured gloves and a ski mask in preparation for the killing.
Now, didn't most of the other guys go home? Most of the other ones went home. The only ones that were left were Kevin, Chris, Pete, and Derek. So
it was decided that Foster would do the actual shooting. Black would act as a getaway driver, Shields would knock on the door, and Magnotti would stay in the car and act as a lookout. Foster went home and grabbed his shotgun and pellets, which he believed to be untraceable. On the way to the killing, Foster sang a deranged version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Oh, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better shut up and prepare to die. Kevin Foster's coming to your house.
Oh my God. That's just so fucked.
Well, this just shows the mentality of him. I mean, he's got this deranged, he's like this big time chaos.
He's 18 years old.
But he's like this, he wants to rain this terror and chaos on this community, but he's stealing canned peaches. Big time. So Shields was used as a decoy to get Schwebes to open the door. Foster thought that Shields was excellent in that role because he was one of Schwebes' band students. It was Shields. I'm sorry. That's who it was.
Magnotti waited in the car with Black. At approximately 11:30 p.m., when Schwebes opened his front door, Shields sprinted away. Schwebes took one step before he was shot in the head by Foster. Foster then shot him in the buttocks because he believed he was a homosexual. Because Foster believed that it was impossible to trace shells back to his shotgun because it was a smooth-bore weapon, Foster left 2 spent shotgun shells at the scene.
Hold on. So he thought he was a homosexual?
He thought Schwebes was a homosexual.
So here's a guy, and he wanted to, remember he was going to shoot minorities at Disney?
Uh-huh.
And now he's shooting a guy who's homosexual. So this guy's like, he's like big time racist.
And homophobic, apparently.
And, well, I mean, obviously a murderer at this point, but I'm just saying that so I didn't shot him in the buttocks. Okay. What's that got to do with anything?
I don't know.
Understand. Why would you I don't know. I'm sorry. That kind of stuff, it just drives me nuts.
Although there were no eyewitnesses, 2 of Schwebes' neighbors heard the shots in a car as it left the scene. Paramedics arrived at the scene almost immediately and declared Schwebes dead. The medical examiner confirmed that Schwebes died of a shotgun wound to the head and pelvis, and that Schwebes would have died immediately from the shot to the face. On the way to Foster's home after the killing, the group stopped and removed the stolen tag, and Foster wiped off the tag to remove any fingerprints before discarding it. Once home, the four of them got into a group hug as Foster congratulated them for successfully sticking to the plan. Foster then called Burnett and Tyrone and boasted about how he blew off parts of Schwebes' face and to watch for it in the news.
You know, if they would have given him a bit of chance, he was an ex-Marine.
Yeah.
He would have whooped their ass.
Probably.
Take the guns out of the equation. You want to be tough guys? Drop the gun. Yeah.
So the next day, on May 1st, 1996, while at Young's apartment, the 6 o'clock news reported the murder, and Foster continuously laughed, hollered, and bragged about it. Reporter Jim Greenhill arrived at the scene of the crime early the next morning. Now, Greenhill told Dateline, "I had gone to the house where the band director, Mark Schwebes, had been killed. For a few seconds, it had crossed my mind, what if it was the kids from his own school? And I laughed at myself. I remember laughing out loud because it just seemed so incredibly improbable."
That's because everybody loved him.
Yes, he was a very well-liked teacher.
So now Sheriff John McDougal, who was the sheriff at the time, headed the investigation. With little to go on, his deputies zeroed in on the pellets lodged in the victim's pelvis. So you got the shells, but you still got the pellets. Sheriff John McDougal told Dateline, "We call it a signature. When there's any sexual connotations in a homicide, we try to look at why is that there. Was Mr. Schwebes involved in some kind of love triangle?"
Yeah, lead detectives in the case initially focused on a love triangle they believed that Mark Schwebes had been caught up in. However, the members of the group and its fringe members soon began bragging about the killing.
You know, there's only one person that can never keep a secret. If there's more than one person that knows the secret, somebody's going to tell somebody.
On May 2nd, Craig Lesh, a hanger-on of the group, bragged to his ex-girlfriend Julie that the Lords of Chaos had killed the teacher. He told her that he had been present and was actually the one who had knocked on the door. On May 3rd, after a restless night, Julie decided that she had to tell authorities what she knew. The detectives then questioned Craig Lesh, learning that he had not actually been present during the murder. They also learned that the group had been responsible for the Coca-Cola bottling plant bombing. This led to the arrests of the key members of the group on their way to commit a robbery at Hardee's, where Magnotti and Shields worked.
I miss Hardee's.
Deputies had been following Pete and Chris the entire evening. Shortly after, the sheriff's men picked up Derek as well.
And a snake of deputy cars in the night zeroed in on mastermind Kevin with his best friend Burnett in the car. They were headed to the meet point when, at 8:45, a sheriff's car signaled for them to pull over. So now he's got them pulled over.
"What do I do?" Burnett asked. "Pull over, I guess," Kevin answered. In his last seconds of freedom, Kevin turned to his friend and said, "See you in hell." 7 young men were brought to interrogation rooms. Deputies raided their homes, confiscated their computers, took their notebooks, and from Kevin's house, more than 20 guns and rifles.
Boy, his mom was really stockpiling him from the pawn shop, huh?
The police found Foster's shotgun, ski mask, gloves, and newspaper clippings of the murder in the trunk of Magnotti's car. Foster's fingerprints were found on the shotgun, the latex gloves, and the newspaper. Burnett and Magnotti's prints were also found on the newspaper.
Now, Brad Young and Craig Lesh were quickly released with no charges filed against them, right?
Yeah.
Because they weren't there. They weren't present during the murder. So Chris Burnett, he worked out a deal with prosecutors. He would plead guilty to second-degree arson and armed robbery. He'd serve 2 years in jail and receive 10 years probation and turn state's evidence against the Lords of Chaos. Tom Tyrone also turned state's evidence. Remember, these are the guys that weren't there, being allowed to plead no contest to second-degree arson and serve 1 year in jail with 10 years probation. Now, they're only pleading to the arson because they were present for the Coca-Cola explosion, correct?
Yeah, they weren't present at the murder.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to turn state's evidence to tell what they've heard, but yet they still have to be punished for the arson. So they're kind of getting off real easy, considering.
In March 1997, Magnotti pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 32 years, one for each year of Mark Schwebes' life, and agreed to testify.
Yeah, he gets released in 2023, so his release is coming up, but he was also charged with arson, robbery, carjacking, racketeering, and of course the murder charge. So, I mean, they piled everything on him.
2 weeks before his trial began, Shields pled guilty to first-degree murder, followed in October by Black. Both received life imprisonment. Only Kevin Foster went to trial. Lee County Prosecutor Marshall King Hall, Bob Lee, and Randy McGruther offered Kevin Foster life without the possibility of parole, an offer he turned down. He told his attorneys, Bob Jacobs and Marquin Renard, that he considered this a worse fate than being sent to Old Sparky, Florida's electric chair.
They don't use Sparky anymore, right?
No.
So if you're new to Sparky, look it up.
During the trial, Foster's mother testified that he was at home during the murder of Mark Schwebes. But one by one, the members of the Lords of Chaos took the stand and stated that not only had Foster been there, but he had been the ringleader of the plot. After 2 hours and 16 minutes, the jury reached a verdict of guilty.
2 hours and 16 minutes, that's hardly no time at all.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even, some jurors take longer for lunch.
During the penalty phase, the state presented one witness. The state's witness, Robert Durham, was the director of student assignment for Lee County and former principal of Riverdale High School. Durham testified to his knowledge and hiring of Schwebes as band director. He also testified that Schwebes' death was devastating not only to the school, but also to the rest of the student body, whose participation in extracurricular activities dropped significantly as a result of the tragedy. The school had to bring in numerous counselors to help students cope with the effects of Schwebes' death.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, I know when certain things happened at school. I remember there was a death of a student when I was in high school, and it really, even though people didn't know him, they still kind of felt sort of an attachment because we all went to the same school. So I can't even imagine like a teacher or this happening to a teacher.
By a vote of 9-3, the jury recommended the death penalty.
Die.
On June 17, 1998, Judge Anderson agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Foster to death.
They were still using Old Sparky back then, right?
Yes, this was, yeah.
So, the trial and sentencing were over, but reporter Jim Greenhill, the one we spoke about earlier, he wasn't finished with his story. So he decides he's going to write a book.
He had an hour-long phone conversation with the murdered teacher's sister, but that wasn't enough. Greenhill told Dateline, and I decided that the first person to try to talk to is Kevin. Kevin is the most important person in the story. Kevin was on death row in the process of appealing his conviction. His mother, Ruby, was still in town, but could Jim approach her? The last time they'd met, she told Jim she hated him. She had fought to have her son's trial moved, said Jim's coverage had tainted the jury pool. It was after all her demands were finally denied that she finally confronted Jim face to face. Greenhill told Dateline, I ran into her in the corridor, and the first thing she said to me was, I hate you. Those were the first words that she said.
Yeah, but even though he still decided to reach out to her, right?
Yes.
And Ruby's his mom's name.
Ruby is Kevin Foster's mom.
Okay.
Now, Greenhill told Dateline, I called Ruby up and said, would you and or Kevin like to talk to me at this point? And she said yes. She said, in fact, that she had been trying to reach me and that she felt the time had come to talk. She wanted to convince me of Kevin's innocence. Jim met Ruby several times in the same house in which her son plotted the murder 2.5 years earlier, and soon Jim started corresponding with Kevin. I know, and God in heaven knows I'm not a murderer, Kevin wrote in a letter to Greenhill.
Yeah, whatever. Now, finally, in March of 1999, Kevin did invite Jim to meet him face-to-face while he was in the prison on death row, right?
Mm-hmm. There's a very idealistic and I'm told naive side to me still, and I really had this idea that I could go up there and he would tell me the truth, whatever the truth was. And in learning the truth, I would have a better book, and it would help him somehow, he told Dateline. So Jim became a death row regular, but not without commitment. It was a 5-hour drive from his house to the prison.
Just so you're aware, I don't care if there's a book deal. I'm not going to be a death row regular.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not going to death row under any circumstances, not even for this podcast and interview. Just saying.
I might.
You would. You would.
Hey, just last week I was corresponding with a murderer on Reddit.
Allegedly.
I'm sorry. Allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay, let's get that correct. So, well,
back to the story.
Yeah. So Jim made the most of all these trips he did with Ruby, Kevin's mom. And it was on one of the road trips where Jim began to feel that this was not a normal relationship of the mother and son.
These two were like a team.
Yeah, it was creepy.
They were almost like a couple, he described. Now, he told Dateline, when they're together as a pair, they have a relationship that sometimes seems more boyfriend-girlfriend than mother and son. The way that she holds him, the way that they touch each other, the way that they talk, and the things they talk about. She talked about looking into his room when he was in his bedroom with his girlfriend and watching him.
Say what?
Creepy.
What, you mean watching him, like, doing the nasty?
That's what I gather from that statement.
Oh, my God. Okay. Well, I guess either way, Jim Greenhill and Kevin Foster, being death row buddies, they kind of started to grow close now because obviously Jim's trying to write this book and get as much information.
Right.
And Kevin's kind of digging this guy, right?
Yeah. So they start sharing their stories, realizing that they're a lot more alike than one would have thought. Now, Greenhill was a recovering alcoholic and addict. He was in the 12-step program. When he was younger, he shared with Foster how he once shot an AK-47 into the air and he loved it. He told Dateline, I told Kevin there were times when at a younger period of my life, I'd like to go out and vandalize things. That I would just go out in the middle of the night and vandalize things just for the fun of it. And I didn't need an audience. The day that I told him that, he jumped up from his seat and goes, yeah. And he's like really excited. Yeah, you too? I'd like to do that too.
So now with all these visits and everything, Kevin kept kind of like egging him along and sort of upping the ante, giving Jim gifts. He gave him clothes to make him look more like him, Kevin. Gave him a gold chain, hoop earrings, and I think even a black leather jacket.
Yes. And he requested that Jim wear the leather jacket to one of their meetings, and Jim did.
Oh, jeez. So he's straight on trying to get this story.
So all of this is going on, and people start to speculate that the writer, Jim Greenhill, is falling in love with Kevin Foster.
Well, falling in love with Kevin Foster is a bad idea if you're a guy because it'll get you shot in the ass. Just putting that out there.
But he denies that it was a romantic or sexual attraction. He told Dateline, there's a chemistry between somebody like Kevin and his followers that can be mistaken by people viewing it from a distance as perhaps rather like an amorous relationship or something. But I think it's psychological. I think it's a psychological attraction. The subject of murder was discussed often and freely between Foster and Greenhill. 13 months into their relationship, when Jim says Kevin told him a secret that he had never shared with another adult before. Now, Greenhill told Dateline he started talking about the murder. He didn't say, I killed Mark Schwebes. It wasn't quite like that. It was a given. He just started talking about the murder.
So he just starts talking to Jim Greenhill about the murder itself. He never said I killed him, but just talking about what happened.
Just starts talking about the murder, yep.
Well, didn't Foster get like really creepy and shit and try to devise this plan with Greenhill to do something?
Soon Foster told Greenhill about a new plan. He wanted to silence those who had turned against him after the murder. He wanted to punish them, especially his former best friend, Chris Burnett, the first to hand Kevin over to authorities. See, Kevin actually believed that he could get out. He was waiting on the results of an appeal, hoping for a new trial and possibly even an acquittal. But he had one serious problem, which were 6 witnesses.
That's tough. I mean, you think of some of the trials that go where they got one witness or, they have like one solid witness. But of course, he had this whole gang of people that knew the type of person he was and what he did. 3 other ones which were there.
In a recorded conversation, Foster told Greenhill he should have taken care of all the witnesses right after the murder of Mark Schwebes. Now, this is the recorded conversation. Kevin Foster, I should have wasted their whole fucking act that night.
You've thought about that?
Oh man, so many times. Dude, I had a fucking 12 gauge and a 45. Bam, bam, bam. The only problem and the only reason I didn't is the simple fact that everybody knew who they hung out with.
Now, on June 11th of 2000, Foster laid out this plan for Jim to kill the three who had betrayed him.
Tell them you're an author, Foster said. You call those fuckers up and you say, I'm so-and-so. I'll give you $1,000. Come hang out with me for a day. Show me around. They would meet in an empty parking lot, one at a time in hourly intervals. There, Jim would zap them unconscious with a stun gun, drive them to an open grave, and shoot them. Foster said in a recorded call, you ain't gonna be pumping 30 rounds. What you do when you do it is you put it against the fucking flesh. Heart, head, either one.
Wow.
Now, on the night of June 25th, Ruby Foster called up Jim Greenhill. I know what's up, Greenhill recalls Kevin's mother saying. He told me everything. She was in on the plan.
Did he go to the cops?
Yes. It's at this point, Jim Greenhill goes straight to the authorities. He called Randall McGruther, the prosecutor on the original case, and told him everything. So when Jim met Ruby outside the Walmart where she worked, he was wearing a wire. They met to talk about the plan and discuss the problem. Ruby said Kevin's favorite gun would be traceable, so she came up with a better plan. Ruby Foster said, my problem was the gun item. That's my biggest worry about the whole thing. I will get you an unregistered off-the-street gun. The following Saturday, Jim says Ruby invited him to her house and gave him a Remington Model 31 16-gauge shotgun.
Nice guy.
In the tape, you can hear them finalize the plan.
I'm going to kill Burnett first. I'm going to do Burnett first because he's going to be trouble. Tyrone and Young are not going to, they're not going to.
Why are you not getting Lesh?
Because Kevin doesn't think Lesh can testify.
But Kevin will get him later.
That's what Kevin said.
Ruby was adamant this crime, unlike the teacher's murder, remained unsolved. She repeatedly told Jim to dispose of any forensic evidence before leaving the murder site, things like shell casings. I don't care if you have to dig for them. You don't leave those shells.
Okay, you got it.
You swear to me you won't leave shells.
I absolutely promise. I swear to God.
She also told Jim to sprinkle a powerful chemical on the bodies. Did he tell you about getting a bag of lye or lime?
No, he didn't.
You do that, then animals won't come and bother the hole and won't dig it up.
That is, for lack of a better term, that's diabolical. Mm-hmm. He's put a lot of thought into this, and he's trying to map it out. So now you've got your mom/girlfriend and this friend/author involved in this plot to take out the witnesses. Mm-hmm. So at this point, this is 2000. So he's been in prison for like 2 years now. So he's had like 2 years to sort of, I guess he's been in prison longer than that, but the trial where he was convicted was 98, correct?
Yes.
So he's been in there a little over 2 years planning this whole scheme. So I think he maybe wanted to do that right off the bat.
Yeah. And so Jim Greenhill, a reporter turned author turned prospective hitman, agreed to turn state's witness and help investigators unravel the plot ripped out of his own book. Foster and his mother were later convicted of conspiracy to commit murder for planning retaliation murders against the members of Lords of Chaos who testified against Foster in the original trial. Ruby Foster was given 5 years in prison, and Kevin was given an additional sentence concurrent with his death penalty.
So they're going to kill him and then put him back in jail.
So...
Now, they had stuff as recent as 2018 on this, didn't they? I mean,
Jim Greenhill... Yes, as recent as 2018, he filed an appeal.
With the Supreme Court? Of Florida Supreme Court?
Yes, which was denied. He actually filed an appeal at the same time that Brandy Jennings, the Cracker Barrel murderer, filed his appeal. And both were denied. But Jim Greenhill did go on to write his book. It's called Someone Has to Die Tonight.
My little homie, can he die tonight?
And now my thing is... The funny thing, no, it's not a funny thing. But
well, that's terminology.
If I were Jim Greenhill, I'd be scared to death that he was going to have somebody kill me.
Well, you know, and he said it earlier. If you think about guys like Charles Manson and I can't even think of his name, the Waco guy. What's his name? The Branch Davidians. You got one guy that convinces all these people to do things for them.
Yes.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is this guy obviously convinced all these other kids around him that, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to be lords of chaos, and we're going to rain terror down. We're going to blow up a Coca-Cola plant. We're going to kill somebody. So he has the ability to sort of brainwash people, if you will. He even said that, that his charm, he was starting to get sort of close to the guy, not in a homosexual way as people had thought originally, but he was kind of falling for it. And, you never know if you're out wandering the streets and this guy's got people that in prison that are getting out in a year or two. They get out. You're absolutely right. I'd be scared too, because you don't know the connections he makes.
Yeah.
And if you got a smooth talker, like I said, like Charles Manson, who could convince anybody to do anything for him, I think that's why people were scared of him, because there's a guy who killed all those people but never actually killed anybody.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that one. So this is Lords of Chaos, Lee County. Our recommended reading is
Someone's Gotta Die Tonight by Jim Greenhill.
That'll pretty much lay out the case for you.
Yes.
Obviously, or you could just re-listen to this whole podcast, and there you go. Got it. All right, everyone. I think that's it for tonight.
Please make sure to follow us on social media at Paradise After Dark Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and at Paradise Dark 239 on Twitter.
And check out our Etsy store for some awesome Paradise After Dark t-shirts and swag.
Please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And please check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Paradise After Dark Podcast.
And if for some reason you can't get there that way, hook up their social media, follow us.
Follow the links I've posted.
And she's got links posted and you never know, you might get some cool stuff. Well, thanks everyone for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark.